You know, when you hear the word slavery in the Americas, a really specific, brutal picture probably pops into your head, right? But what if I told you that's only one part of a much bigger and honestly, a much more hidden story? Let's dig into these other systems of forced labor that really shaped our world from the get-go.
Just take a look at this number, 2.5 to 5 million. It's it's a huge range and it's a staggering figure. So who are we talking about here? Who were these millions of people? We're talking about the indigenous people of the Americas. They were caught in a system of bondage that was just as massive and just as horrific as the one most of us learn about in school. It was like this parallel tragedy unfolding in pretty much every corner of the New World. And here's the thing, the historian Andres Resendes puts it perfectly. He says that this other slavery wasn't just some side story. No, it was foundational to colonization. And get this, it operated under a completely different set of rules.
Okay, so let's dive in. What exactly made this system so different, and how did it become so widespread?
All right, so the contrast here is it's crucial to understand. On one side, you've got the transatlantic African slave trade, right? That was a legal, state-sanctioned system. It was permanent, hereditary, and mostly targeted men for hard labor on plantations. But then you have indigenous slavery, which was, believe it or not, officially illegal in the Spanish Empire. And that single fact that it was illegal changes everything. It's what made the system more fluid, maybe not always a life sentence, but it also meant, tragically, that it focused way more on women and children.
So you're probably thinking, wait a minute, if it was illegal, how in the world did it happen on such a massive scale? Well, that's where things get really murky, and honestly pretty cynical. Back in 1542, the Spanish crown actually passed these new laws, and they were super clear, a total ban on enslaving Native Americans. The law was explicit. You cannot, under any circumstances, make an Indian a slave. Full stop. And yet, millions were. Well, the colonists basically became masters of the loophole. They figured out all these workarounds. For instance, they could enslave people captured in what they called just wars, or they could ransom captives from other tribes, which, let's be real, was just a sneaky way of buying people. And then they invented this whole new vocabulary of forced labor. You had systems like encomienda, which gave colonists the right to the labor of entire native communities, or debt peonage, where people were trapped in endless servitude over fake debts. See? These were all just clever, cynical ways to get forced labor without actually calling it slavery. And all this legal gymnastics is a big reason why this history has been kept in the shadows for so long. Let's look at a specific example, because it really shows the devastating human cost of all this. The real engine of the Spanish Empire. It wasn't gold, it was silver. And to rip all that silver out of the ground, Spain needed a huge, and I mean a truly disposable, workforce. And they found it. They found it in the indigenous populations, forcing countless people into the absolute darkness of the mines to do some of the most dangerous, back-breaking work you can even imagine. And there was no place deadlier, no place more horrifying than the mercury mine at Huancavelica in Peru. See, you needed mercury to separate the silver from the ore. It was essential for the whole operation, but it was also a killer, a potent, slow, debilitating poison. And the thing is, the Spanish knew. They knew exactly how toxic this stuff was. They saw with their own eyes what it did to the workers, the shaking, the teeth falling out, the slow, agonizing death. But for decades, they just ignored it, all for the sake of profit. Those mines became a graveyard. They wiped out the local population so completely that the Spanish had to go farther and farther out just to find new people to send in. Huancavelica is just this horrifying symbol of what this whole system of coerced labor was really about. Okay, so let's shift gears now. Let's head over to the English colonies, because a different, but yeah, an equally brutal system of bondage was being built there. So in early Virginia, you had both Native Americans and Africans being forced into labor, but their situations ended up going in two totally different directions. Native slavery was often justified as a consequence of war, capturing your enemies. But then tobacco happened. And as the colony got hooked on this massive cash crop, the colonists turned more and more to African labor. And they did something new. They systematically created a whole new legal category just for them, defining them as permanent hereditary property. And the real turning point, the thing that changed everything, was this one law from 1662. It's a Latin phrase, partus sequitur ventrum. It basically means the offspring follows the womb. And this was a chillingly brilliant and terrible innovation. It meant that if your mother was a slave, you were born a slave for life. It didn't matter who your father was. It completely cut the legal tie to the father and cemented slavery as a self-perpetuating, racialized institution here in North America. It was a game changer.
But here's something we have to remember. The history of slavery isn't just a story of oppression. It's also a story of knowledge, of incredible skill, and of human agency, often where you'd least expect it. Which brings us to a pretty big secret, right at the heart of what became America's wealthiest colony. So by the 1700s, South Carolina was just raking it in, generating unbelievable wealth. And their main export wasn't tobacco like in Virginia or sugar like in the Caribbean. Nope, it was rice. And rice created a class of planters that were richer than pretty much anyone else in North America. But there was just one tiny problem. The English and French planters who settled there, they had zero experience growing rice. Absolutely none. So the question is, how did they pull it off? How did they create this incredibly sophisticated agricultural system in these dangerous, swampy, malaria-infested lands? The answer is as simple as it is profound. They didn't. Their slaves taught them. The knowledge came directly from the enslaved West Africans they forced to the colony, many whom came from a region literally known as the Rice Coast of Africa. Just look at the level of expertise we're talking about here. This wasn't just simple farming. This was advanced engineering. The enslaved Africans brought with them an entire system of knowledge. We're talking tidal engineering to flood the fields at just the right time. Complex water management systems with dikes and canals and sluice gates. They even knew which specialized tools to use and how to make them. It was a complete technological package brought over from West Africa. Even one of the planters admitted it. He called a rice plantation a huge hydraulic machine. Think about that. And who were the engineers who designed, built, and ran that machine? It was the enslaved people. They were the ones with the cultural and technical know-how to make it all work. So we really have to reframe how we think about this. This wasn't just labor. This was one of the most significant transfers of technology in all of early American history. And it was carried out, not by the colonists, but by the people they enslaved. It's just an incredible story of agency and intellectual power, all happening under the most brutal conditions you can possibly imagine. And that just forces you to wonder, right? If a story this massive, affecting millions of people, could be so completely hidden in plain sight, what else is out there? What other hidden histories of knowledge, of skill, of exploitation are built into the very fabric of the world that's all around us?